Hey everyone, today it's getting personal. We're going to talk about e-commerce, React, and the static web. So who am I? I'm Colby Fayock. I'm the one hugging BB-8 and Kylo Ren over there. I work with the dev community as a developer advocate for Applitools. You can find me pretty much anywhere on the web by just Googling my name, as I'm the only one in the world. So let's look back about the end of 2019. It both feels like it was 10 years ago and just last week. We were all able to safely go out to restaurants, we could meet up with family and friends, we could even grab a bite to eat alone. And now we can sort of do that stuff, but it's different, and it's still not completely safe. But I don't think any of us expected 2020 would be the year that we would meet a pandemic. I know I expected 2020 to be the best year ever. But that's realistically what happened. Stores and restaurants started shutting down because they couldn't support the decline in business. I lost my favorite restaurant in Virginia, and I was really hoping to hit it up one last time before I moved to Pennsylvania. Luckily, some restaurants were able to sustain themselves. Between apps like Uber Eats and Instacart, we've been able to attempt to have some kind of normal life, but at home. Restaurants have also attempted to offer curbside pickup for themselves, but this can be especially hard for business owners if they aren't used to actually fulfilling orders that way. Because we have options out there like DoorDash and Uber Eats, these restaurants could quickly start accepting orders online without dealing with any of the technical infrastructure. Unfortunately, these services tend to cut deep into the restaurant's profits, and this makes it challenging for them, but this most certainly helps some of those restaurants stay afloat. Now, the reason some of these restaurants had the opportunity to save their businesses is because of e-commerce. Now, small brick and mortar mom and pop shops might have over 50 years of business experience, but when you're in a lockdown, a lot of those in-person advantages start to fade away. So let's talk about e-commerce. Now, the concept of e-commerce probably isn't new to anybody, but it's simply the act of buying and selling online. Whether you're buying a t-shirt from your favorite TV show, or you're buying some food from a local restaurant, or maybe you're even filling a prescription, e-commerce gives a way to actually buy these things without ever leaving our home. And it's not slowing down. We saw a huge amount of growth in 2020, well, because of the obvious, but more and more people are getting comfortable with buying things online. And in the middle of the pandemic, more and more people need to buy online. On top of that, more services are making it even easier to buy stuff on their stores. As developers, we're the backbone of this growth. Every online store has a single developer or a huge team of developers that built that experience. We're the ones that give the people the ability to buy things online, and that makes it compelling to have a general understanding of how it works. Now, I would bet that most of you have probably purchased at least one thing from a website contributing to that growth chart, but e-commerce shouldn't really be new to anybody. But I'd like to talk about how we can look at e-commerce from a developer perspective. What are some of the challenges of e-commerce? Well, back to our product page, beyond the typical layout like the branding and the navigation, we have some critical components of our page. The image, the title, the price and the variations, the cart and the button to add it to the cart. When we're trying to serve this page, it can't just be static HTML. Some of those pieces need to be highly dynamic in an online store. Parts like the image and the title, they shouldn't change that often. They're probably okay being static and waiting for that HTML file to update again. Even the variation selection, we probably know all the variations ahead of time, so that can be a static list of options too. But the price, the availability of that item and its variations, and even being able to purchase it, they all need to be accurate when somebody is trying to buy it. If the price is wrong, your customers might complain that they're getting overcharged. If somebody buys that item and it's sold out, you're stuck not having enough items to send out to people, meaning canceled orders and unhappy customers. Well, the good thing is we have a lot of options with how we can solve this. Some solutions are more traditional, but we also have some modern techniques that can help us give our customers a great experience. Serverful solutions are probably your more traditional route, where the browser makes a request to the server, that server renders the page, and returns that HTML to the browser, where the customers can actually shop. With a serverful solution, our dynamic content really isn't a problem. Each page request hits the server, so that page can be custom tailored to the details of that visitor's state. Whether that's reaching out to the database to grab a person's logged in state, or if it's grabbing a real-time price and availability of an item. But there's another option, where we can serve our website completely static. Instead of that server taking the time to actually render the page, we serve static files straight from storage. That includes the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and any files that we want to actually show our customers. When it's served statically, we don't need to do any of that work on the server. We deliver our website directly to our visitor. In order to make these pages dynamic, we can reach out to APIs from the browser or at build time. So what would that actually look like in practice? Well, showing some images and text on a page doesn't need to be dynamic. Leveraging the tooling that we have, we can statically generate that page's HTML and CSS, along with any of the other JavaScript, and dump that into object storage. We can even display a bunch of products in a grid. Like we talked about before, that also doesn't need to be dynamic. There's nothing necessarily special with how this page needs to be put together. And to be clear, I'm not sure if Space Cadet, the store that I've actually been showing here, is static. I think they're actually on something like Shopify. But beyond a typical content management solution that triggers a new deploy on every update, this doesn't need to be real-time dynamic. But moving it back again to our product page, the vast majority of this page can still be static. Our images and meta information can be served directly from static hosting. We can let that refresh with a new deploy when something actually changes. To provide dynamic aspects, we can take advantage of client-side requests. We can pull that price directly from our e-com platform like Stripe so that it's always up to date. For our cart, we can store that state in local storage, or we can use a serverless function to hit a database with that information. The stock is probably the trickiest of all this. Imagine a website like Amazon where you may literally have 1 million people trying to buy one product at the same time. And on top of that, that product might have limited stock. You need to be able to support very quick read and writes to avoid overselling. Content management systems usually aren't equipped for that kind of thing, so you'll want to take some kind of e-commerce service with inventory management built in, or a performant database solution. That way we can avoid unhappy customers. But as we sort of dissect this page, we can see that how realistically we could serve the underlying page here completely static, which will alone give us a bunch of wins, while still maintaining that dynamic nature of an online store. Now, those dynamic pieces are probably bigger challenges that you'll face specifically with e-commerce, but I mentioned that by serving our static pages, we get a bunch of other benefits. So what exactly are those benefits? Well, once we have those core pages in storage, we can serve them from a CDN like Cloudflare or AWS, where using a CDN allows those pages to get served from locations all over the world. They'll at least be relatively close to your visitors, which means they're going to get served super fast, which is a really good thing because people want their pizza really fast. Like here, Little Caesars used Gatsby to create a website for their ordering experience. But beyond hungry customers, page speed is important because it directly correlates to the conversion rate. If you're not familiar, conversion rate is the percentage of your traffic that's actually going to buy something. There are a ton of studies on this, but eBay, for instance, found a 0.5% increase in their conversion rate with a 100 millisecond load time improvement. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but eBay is worth over $10 billion. So just as an example, 0.5% of 1 billion is 5 million. So that adds up pretty quickly. And bonus, serving those static files from a CDN most likely means less downtime. The fact that the page files are static and on top of that cached at the edge, those pages will infinitely scale. You don't need to really worry about how your website will scale aside from the actual APIs. There's less of a chance that you're going to get taken completely down by the Reddit hug of death, or by an instant surge of high volume traffic, which could mean lost money if your visitors can't actually buy anything. And it's also going to be cheap. While this might not matter as much for big corporations, for small business owners and individuals, every single cent counts. The fact that there are so many services with free tiers, you can literally get up and running with a store for free, and then scale that cost of processing payments as you grow. So now that I've convinced you that this is a good idea, where do we actually get started? While trying to narrow down e-commerce into 3 things feels like a little bit of an oversimplification, there are really a couple of core components of an online store. First, you have your products that you want to sell. You have to be able to take orders and payments for those orders, and you ultimately need to fulfill those orders. These are the 3 together that are going to provide the goal of being able to sell things online and get them to the person who actually purchased them. Now, first off, in order to have a store, you need to be able to sell something. What products do you actually want to sell in your store? Your products are the first thing your customers will see when they visit your store. Where are they going to store that information? Is it going to be a CMS or some kind of JSON file? How are you going to actually show those products? Maybe you just have a few products on one page, or maybe you have an entire catalog for your search. While most of the heavy lifting for an online store happens in the background, you first need to have an idea about what products you're trying to sell and how much each one of them costs. That way, you can give your customers some options of what they can actually buy. Second, when selling something, you need to ultimately take people's money. How are you going to actually take orders and payments for those orders? Once your customer finds what they want, they'll need to pay for it. Are you going to actually interface with a payment processor directly? Are you going to create a bunch of forms that take that information? Or are you going to use a service that handles all of those checkout details? Taking payments and dealing with addresses are very complicated, even more so when you start to deal with international customers. These are sensitive parts of your online store that need to be handled with care. Building that all yourself is really completely doable, but it's not something you want to take lightly. Regardless, you need to figure out how to securely take those payments for your store and relate those payments to your orders. And third, after somebody picked out what they wanted and you took their money, how are they going to actually deliver that product to your customers? Is this a digital product that you can email or let somebody actually download? If so, how will that work? There are a bunch of integrations that you can use, and it's not perfect, but I use a mix of the Stripe API and an email service for my ebooks, where not every platform makes it super easy to have a customizable end-to-end flow. If it's a physical product, do you need shipping information? Who's going to pack it up and ship it? Some e-com platforms will handle this for you, but a lot won't. Once you take somebody's payment, you're on the hook for getting them what they paid for. You need to be sure that the fulfillment process is working completely smoothly. And while all these are critical pieces to building an online store, we're really going to focus on the first two pieces here. There's a lot of software and technology that can even handle the fulfillment process. There are even options for embedding that software in your online stores and emails so that your customers are getting personalized experiences. But as developers, more often than not, we're concerned about how we get the products up on a page and how we can actually let people buy those products. So we're going to focus on that. So with that said, we need to figure out what our stack is going to look like. What are we going to actually build our store on top of? Well, as we talked about a bit earlier, there are a ton of serverful solutions. You could totally spin up your own with completely complex or custom infrastructure. And that's exactly the type of system that I worked at with ThinkGeek years ago, where it was on a good old Perl codebase. But in modern times, a lot more powerful e-com platforms have risen up. Shopify, for instance, is a super powerful solution, and it comes with an all-inclusive feature set, like complete product management, page creation, and checkout. But if you're a new business or you're just building out a portfolio project, this is going to come with a hefty price tag. And this isn't only Shopify, to be clear. Most vendors like Shopify are going to have that hefty price tag. Another familiar solution is WordPress, and you can use tools like WooCommerce, which are really popular in the WordPress ecosystem. With it, you can easily sell your products on your website. But with WooCommerce or any serverful solution, you'll likely have to maintain those servers, which frequently have costs involved. Again, similar to Shopify, these are great, powerful solutions. But I just convinced you that we want to build this out statically, right? And we're not looking to spend a bunch of money to spin up our first store. Which brings me back to static apps. One of the cool things about the dev and Jamstack communities is there's a ton of vendors who offer free tiers for devs like us that just want to get started. This applies to whether you're spinning up your own sticker store or building out your portfolio. There are e-commerce services that can handle things like payments, and they take a percentage of the transaction rather than a monthly cost, meaning you'll only have to pay if you make money. To start, we need to manage our products somewhere. This is where we can take advantage of a headless CMS, where we would pull those products in at compile time and load that static metadata that we're talking about. In my case, I use WordPress for my spacejelly.dev website, and I know WordPress isn't the most popular solution in modern bleeding edge world, but it's working well in my case, and is a common platform if you're building this for somebody else. There are also a ton of other options available. Another cool thing about the Jamstack community is there's a ton of services available, making it likely that you can find one that fits your exact needs. You'll also need to then manage how you're actually going to take the payments, but also be able to have people actually add them to the cart. One example of this is Snipcart, which is a drop-in solution that lets you easily add a shopping cart to pretty much any type of website. Once you add in the Snipcart script from their CDN, you literally just need to add some class names and data attributes with your product data. And this doesn't simply only apply to static websites, you can really drop their script in any kind of page. But once you do, you pretty much immediately have a shopping cart on your website backed by their platform. This includes the entire checkout process. And this is a really great solution if you don't want to spend a lot of time with all that shopping cart logic, which can get pretty complicated. It can be a bear, and this makes it super easy. I actually use it for my spatially.dev website. It also includes things like inventory management and payment processing. You can avoid having to deal with manually keeping track of your stock, which is complicated. Snipcart and other ecom platforms will actually just handle that for you. You also have a lot of other options, like if you want to dig a little deeper and work on a custom solution, you can use your favorite framework like Next.js or Gatsby. Once you create your new app, you have full access to React. With it, you can create your own shopping cart. Since at that point you have the flexibility of React, you have full control over how somebody goes from adding an item to that cart to getting to that cart page. You also have the full capabilities of React's baked-in APIs, so you can manage your own shopping cart state with React's useState hook. You can then make that state global with the context API. That way you can provide the exact experience that you want for your customers. Or if you want to build a if you want the custom experience but you don't want that tricky cart state, you can even pull in a pre-built library like useShoppingCart, which will give you a cart state system out of the box with a React hook that will immediately allow you to get productive with your cart state in your application. So with either of those solutions though, you can store it in that state in local storage. That way, when somebody reloads the page or leaves and comes back after a split second, they can still see all those products inside of their shopping cart. You can even persist that state in a database, but that doesn't necessarily become critical until you want to persist between sessions, or if you want to support some kind of shared cart between different devices. But either way, once you have your cart state, you can use something like Stripe Checkout, where you push your customers into a checkout solution. While Stripe Checkout won't handle all aspects of an online store, similar to Snipcart, Stripe will handle the checkout process, which is one of the more bigger pain points of taking people's money. The cool thing about the static approach, though, and taking advantage of APIs for all aspects of the dynamic pieces, is we can still use services like Shopify if we want. While you'll still be paying that price tag for Shopify, if you're already there, or if you need all the other services that Shopify provides, it makes for a great opportunity to leverage both worlds, the benefits of static sites and your Shopify store. But whatever service you choose, you'll ultimately need to deploy it somewhere, which is probably the easiest part of this entire thing. Once you have that compiled version, you can serve it really wherever you want. At that point, it's just object storage. So whether you want to use Netlify or one of your other favorite cloud providers, you have a ton of options. So what's stopping you from spinning up a new online store? The cool thing about e-commerce is it's become a fundamental piece of our everyday lives. Millions of people around the world are shopping online, and having the tools in our hands makes it easy for us as developers to spin up new online stores. If you want to learn how to build your own online store, you can check out my new course, E-commerce on the Jamstack, over at Level Up Tutorials. We'll walk through building a shop using Snipcart, Next.js, and headless WordPress. I'll include a link in my talk notes. And if you want to, you can just find it over at leveluptutorials.com. And that's it. If you want to learn more or chat about this talk, again, you can find me everywhere at Colby Fayock. Happy to talk about anything here. I'll also tweet out a link with some of the stuff you've seen here today. Thanks, everybody.